Welcome back to Ina Bear Farm. So we're back here in the garden for our kind of part 2 garden cleanup. It's actually been a couple of weeks since I shot the initial video, so you can see quite a difference. A couple of weekends worth of work, and then we've gotten some good rainfall the last few days. So yeah, I'll just take you on a little walkabout here. Our couple rows of carrots are looking good. There's a few spots where they're sort of thinned out when some of those are where there are little critters chomping on them. Could be pill bugs, snails, slugs. We got all sorts out here. You can see some of the perennial peanut starting to fill in these lower paths. I want it to look, a little bit like that. And then see where it's crawling up on the beds is great. I'll go in and harvest that, spread it around because we have the need for a lot of perennial peanut here as a ground cover. This is really cool. You can see our cover crops coming in. And so this is that mustard and buckwheat and jack bean mixture. And so like this is mustard green, this is the jack bean, this is buckwheat. This is actually pigeon pea, which I did not throw in as part of my cover crop, but it's just seed left over from the pigeon pea bushes that I had. So that's great. It adds a little bit of extra diversity, some nitrogen fixing. I just have to, make sure to stay on top of that because those will obviously get much larger. So we've got the 1, 2, 3 rows of cover crop. And what we'll do with those is let them pretty much occupy that space until we're ready to put in our okra, because this will be mostly okra down here. And what I'll do is turn under the mustard, well, I'll turn the whole cover crop under, but mostly I'm looking to turn under the mustard greens and mix them up with the soil beneath, because that deters a lot of nematode activity and will really help with our root knot nematode that we get on our okras and other hibiscus and things. Down this lower row, you can see the perennial peanut starting to take root down here. This was an avocado tree that was just buried in debris, and it's from food waste, food scraps that we put down here. So it's just wild avocado, and it'll come out at some point, but I don't really care, about leaving it for now. And got all this open real estate down here. We used to have a big callow patch down here, taro, and it was just kind of hard to maintain down here. And so I had thought about, what do I want to do with this spot? And it's kind of like a weird little triangle that's left down here at the bottom due to the way that we built our rows on contour to try to just, keep all of the mulches and things in place that we put. And so we've got this section down here that's kind of a weird shape and is a little bit hard to maintain as like annual vegetables. So what I decided was I'm going to put in some like support species type of things. And down here, actually a while ago, I put in a plumeria, and they go dormant in the winter at our elevation. And so that is normal looking for them. They're kind of slow growing at this stage, but eventually this will make like a nice shrub full of beautiful flowers. It's just a little pigeon pea that I've left next to it. And then you can see all this space. So I've got a couple plants. I've got a'ali'i, which is a native plant that's super drought resistant, really pretty flowers. And I've got ulei, which is a sort of a shrubbier, like creeping plant that has really nice white blooms and is very fragrant. And I've got seeds for some native hibiscus that I can mix in here. And so we'll have some kind of shrubby plants along this area. Maybe let the perennial peanut creep in as a longer term ground cover down here. Kind of have to think about that. And then in the short term, I may try to grow some squash pumpkins down here, like kabocha, maybe watermelon, something that could really run. And then if I did that, I'd put down a bunch of cardboard to suppress the weeds in the short run. I've got pretty much all the beds cleaned up. This is our turmeric bed with a lot of the sun hemp stuff just laying on top in the grass. This was where we had cassava, and you can see some of the cassava is still here. None of it really did particularly well, and I think that a lot of that is due to what I'm pretty sure is mongoose digging up and eating at the roots, which is really strange because I kind of figured these would be critter proof in that they are full of cyanide unless you cook them. And so I figured if something did, I figured nothing would try to eat it, but if they did, they wouldn't be around very long. And I don't know, that hasn't really worked out the way I thought it would. So we're just going to have to keep seeing how things go. And I mean, I do have some cassava out here that is very happy. The other thing is timing. You know, I just need to harvest it before they get in here and dig all that up. This was an older cassava bed that had just gotten completely overgrown. And I'm thinking that what I might do here is actually similar to what I did down there with the Sesbania sesbin support trees, and just put those in. So I'll have this kind of nice alternating set of those trees to provide a little bit of extra shade. And speaking of shade, I also need to get some pigeon pea going down the middle of that row with the turmeric so that the turmeric is not in full sun all the time, because it'll do a little better if it's got some shade. You can see the perennial peanut doing good down on this end. A little gap in the middle where the grass just has gotten overgrown, so hopefully now that I've taken that out, it'll recover. This is an older white pineapple patch. I do have plenty of like little starts in here that I could snap off to make new ones, and I'm thinking of kind of starting a new bed up there and migrating a lot of this and then changing over what I've got in this patch. But there's going to be a lot of fruit in this patch this year. You can see quite a bit is already starting to flower. And then the asparagus, now that we've got that cleared out, we should be starting to see new shoots coming up over the next month or so. And what I want to try to do is get this bed covered in a nice layer of wood chips, which I will be making from that tithonia. So that'll kind of be the next big thing for the garden, is to take down all the tithonia, chip it, throw it over in here in the garden in some select spaces, and then let it regrow, because that's our wind protection. Is really important, and I'm trying to time it so that, you know, by the time we really have a lot of vegetables up and growing in here, especially things like tomatoes that are more vertical, that we've got that wind protection back in place in time. But it's also like, it's so woody right now. Number one, it's a great resource to have all those wood chips, but it also gets a little bit thinner in terms of like the leaf growth and everything. And so it'll be nice to just thicken that back up. And it also helps to kind of reduce the root pressure coming into the garden from the tithonia. If I cut it all down, then the roots aren't going to be as vigorous coming to eat up all this good soil that we're developing up here. This row got cover crop, but it hasn't done as well. You can see it's kind of a thinner covering. I think maybe some of it got like washed out. You can tell it's sort of like washed in the specific spots, but it's okay. Once those kind of fill in, that'll help a little bit, and then I may go back and disperse a little bit more seed. And this was where we had the original cover crop and had cut it down and then covered it with grass clippings. And you can see some of the mustard is growing through, and that's totally fine. It's really wild to see these, like certain ones is super healthy and happy, get very robust. This section here will probably be where we're doing like a lot of tomatoes and maybe some other nightshades, eggplants, peppers, things like that. But I do want to kind of mix things up a little bit so it's not all nightshades in one spot. Try to diversify a little bit to reduce any possible pest pressure. And then I kind of passed by, but we got all that nasturtium that was growing. I couldn't remember the name of that in the last video, and of course remembered later, but that tends to start to die out as we get into the hotter, drier months. So it'll probably go for another couple months or so, keep a nice ground cover, and then open up some real estate for growing other stuff. We're looking for some summer squash type of stuff that will actually do well here. The cucurbits are so prone to pests. I mean, that's true really wherever I've grown them, but here, I mean, they just get decimated. People pretty much only grow cucumbers in hoop houses or greenhouses, shade houses, something where they can keep the pests completely out or at least reduce the pest pressure because they're just overwhelming. But we want to look for something in the summer squash variety that will do okay because we really like that. And maybe like a patty pan or something. Let me know if you're in Hawaii and you have good ideas for something in that family to grow, or if there's other things that you've had a lot of success with in terms of like annual vegetables that we could try here. I mean, brassicas have not been so successful. They just get so pest ridden. Obviously the cabbage moths, but then aphids go crazy for them. It just seems like pretty much everything attacks them. And then greens, we usually grow our greens in big containers that have copper tape around them to keep the slugs out. And that's because of the rat lungworm disease, which if you're not from here or other place in the tropics where you have that issue, is a really serious disease that can be spread by slugs and the slime trails that they leave on things. And you can mitigate that by cooking the vegetables, which obviously doesn't work for things like lettuce and stuff like that. So yeah, we don't use a lot of this real estate for those types of greens. Other people do, they just are really careful about washing it and things, but I would rather be like close to 100% sure that I don't have any issues like that. But that's it for the update on the garden. We'll take you back here once we've got more interesting things growing, and you can kind of see how this progresses throughout the growing season. But in the meantime, let me know if you have any questions or suggestions. I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you back here soon at Ina Bear Farm. Aloha.